Now, while we might not come across it all the time, there is just one more clef that it's really good to know about, particularly if we're ever going to look at or learn about orchestral music, because there are some orchestral instruments that make use of this clef from time to time, and it's known as the tenor clef. And just the same way that the alto clef was useful because it allows to show a kind of range of pitches that sat nicely in between the treble clef and the bass clef, we've got a similar sort of thing here. And in fact, the range of pitches that the tenor clef shows compared with the alto clef isn't that different, but there's sometimes when it's just a really good clef to use and it suits the instrument we're working with. The cello, for example, when it goes right the way up into its highest notes, those go really quite far off the top of the bass clef, and so the tenor clef can be a useful one to just help express those higher notes on that instrument. And on the trombone as well, we often use the tenor clef to represent the notes that it's going to play as well. So how does this one work? Well, in fact, it's very, very similar to the alto clef that we were just looking at, and we've got this C clef again. It's just that it's moved slightly. So with the alto clef, it was nicely in the middle of the 5 lines, whereas here it's just a little bit higher. But it in fact indicates exactly the same thing. And so just the same way that the middle of the clef in the alto clef showed us where middle C was, that's exactly the same here on the tenor clef. And so we'll see that it's slightly higher, indicating that it's in fact not the middle line anymore, but this 4th line up, which is going to represent middle C. And so the difference isn't that big, but it's useful just to represent some of these ranges that again sit in between the treble and bass clefs. And in terms of reading the clef, it works exactly the same way as all the other clefs that we've looked at, in that as we go up and down through the lines and spaces, we'll be able to find all the letter names in their normal order. So starting on our middle C, which is in this clef represented by the 4th line of the stave, we can go up into the next space and find a D, and then the top line will be an E. Equally, going downwards, we'll find a B occupies the 3rd space up, and the middle line is an A. The 2nd space up will be a G, and the 2nd line here will be an F. The bottom space will be an E, and finally the bottom line will be a D. And so while we might not necessarily, unless we play one of these instruments which uses the tenor clef sometimes, we may not become as familiar with it and as good at reading it as we would with the treble clef or the bass clef, but it's still really good to know about, because if it comes up and you need to be able to work out what a cello or a trombone is playing, knowing about the tenor clef is dead easy, even if we just have to count up and down through the lines and spaces to work out what note it's asking us to play.